Good evening all. Welcome to Narayana Educational Institutions discussion of September 2nd morning session question paper. In the previous discussion which was posted here, we had a discussion of the first 15 questions. Now we have the remaining 10 questions of the JEE mains paper available. We'll be having that discussion right now. Okay, so my name is Prashant and I'll be having a discussion of the chemistry paper over here. Now, before we get into the question paper discussion, a quick disclaimer like yesterday. The questions here will have errors in both the way the question has been framed, the numbers in the questions maybe, and the key options also. This is because the question paper which we have collected here is purely based on the student's memory. So please take the questions which you see over here with a grain of salt. At the same time, make sure you follow the model of the questions and where the questions are showing up from and the difficulty level of the questions. This should give you an idea as to what to expect in the upcoming JEE mains papers. All right, without any further ado, let's start off. Okay, the first question here, find the number of chiral centers in penicillin. So when we talk about penicillin here, penicillin is going to be something which is a broad spectrum antibiotic. All right, so this broad spectrum antibiotic is going to be something which is available in chemistry in everyday life chapter, and we are going to be having the structure luckily given to us over here. In the previous JEE mains paper in the January session, they did not give structure when they asked for the number of chiral centers. So please watch out for this kind of a question. In this particular case, they seem to have given the structure which is comfortable for the students to solve. If the structure is not given, you need to know how many chiral centers are there. Now, let's start off over here. So in this case here, number of chiral centers applicable are going to be, this is a chiral center, this is a chiral center, this is not, and we end up having this also as a chiral center applicable. Now in this particular case here, we are not going to be counting this nitrogen over here, mainly because this nitrogen is going to be something which is going to be in resonance with this particular location over here, meaning it will end up having partial sp2 hybridization, so it is not to be counted in this case. So finding the number of chiral centers here, we have this as a structure, so this is one of them, this is one of them, this is one of them. So we end up having 3 locations applicable in this case. So we have 3 carbons which are going to be chiral in this particular case. If we have to include the nitrogen also, this particular nitrogen over here is going to be an ambiguous location. Why is it ambiguous? Because it's going to be in resonance with the C double bond O. So it is not going to be considered as a chiral location in this particular case here. Now, this is going to be the question for penicillin number of chiral centers. Let's get to the next one. Which of the following molecules undergo retention after attack by OH minus? So they are talking about retention after attack by OH minus over here. So after nucleophilic attack by OH minus, they are interested in having a retention of configuration. Okay, all right. Let's have a look here. So for retention to be applicable over here, the compound should be optically active, or rather, attack should happen at a chiral center. In that case, we can talk about retention being applicable over there. So let's have a look now. So this carbon over here is not going to be chiral, so no chance over here. This carbon happens to be chiral, so this is going to be retention is possible over here in this case because of the benzene ring effectively helping over here in this particular scenario here. Next, we are going to be having CH3, CH2, okay, not a chiral center. This is not chiral, this is also not chiral, so this is also not applicable. This is also going to be not applicable here. Now, there is one small issue here in this question. In this case here, after nucleophilic attack by OH minus, this retention part over here is not necessarily going to be the only possibility here. So here you will end up having most probably SN1 attack happening here, which will result in both retention and inversion. So my expectation is that there is something which is going to be wrong with the option given over here. But among the options which are given to us, this is the only chiral option available, which means this has to be the answer applicable here. But you are not going to be having any of the options here having any chiral center, so none of the other options are going to be possible. But even in this case, you are going to be having retention and inversion both being possible. So this is also going to be something which is going to be an ambiguous part over here. There is probably an error in the option 2 over here, but according to what is given, this is the best answer applicable. Let's get to the next one. Okay, benzylamine may be alkylated as shown in the following equations. Okay, we have this plus Rx. Okay, all right. Which of the following alkyl halide is the best suited for this reaction through SN1 mechanism? All right. In this particular question, as you can see, they have clearly told you what the mechanism is going to be. If they have given you the mechanism, our job is to basically follow that religiously and not question what they have given over there. So the question is directly giving us to choose SN1 mechanism. SN1, we need to check for C plus stability. Alright, so carbocation stability is going to be the key factor in this particular case here. We need to check for the carbocation stability to get the best particular answer over here. So the most stable carbocation will result in the best product here. So this is going to be very bad carbocation, very bad carbocation. This is a fairly good carbocation because it's a benzyl carbocation. This is going to be ethyl carbocation. So in terms of carbocation stability order, we'll have it as 3 greater than 4 greater than 1 greater than 2. Obviously 3 is the best. Answer has to be option 3 in this particular case. Benzyl carbocation is going to be stabilized by resonance. This is the benzyl carbocation. It is going to be resonance stabilized in this particular case, which is obviously going to be very good in this particular scenario over here. So you're going to be having for this particular case, answer is again going to be option 3. Let's get to the next one. When 90 grams of water, so 90 grams of water now, 90 by 18. Why am I dividing it by 18 over here? Because the molecular mass of water is going to be 18 grams. So 90 by 18 works out as 5 moles in this case. Okay, alright, is heated, then its delta U vaporization at 100 degrees Celsius. 100 degrees Celsius is going to be 373 Kelvin. Temperature at 1 atmosphere pressure is going to be, they have given us delta H vaporization as 40.66 kilojoules per mole in this particular case. So we have been given the value of delta H vaporization as 40.6 kilojoules per mole, and it's given as 1 atmosphere condition, 373 Kelvin over here, okay, and for 5 moles over here. So let's start off in this particular case. So we're going to be having delta H vaporization given to us for 1 mole over here. Alright, this is basically meant for 1 mole here. We need to calculate for 5 moles over here. So if I have to calculate for 5 moles, what is the value going to be? The value here works out as 40.66 into 5. Alright, so it works out as 40.66 into 5 in this particular case here. So this is the delta H vaporization, but they are asking us for delta U vaporization in kilojoules for this particular data over here. So delta U is going to be related to delta H via the standard equation, which is going to be like this. Delta H is equal to delta U plus delta Ng into RT. So let's write down the equation here. So what is happening here? Water is heated and is going to be converted into vapor over here. So the equation which is in the question over here is actually H2O liquid is going to be vaporized and made into H2O gas. So if H2O liquid is converted into H2O gas over here, what is going to be happening is we will definitely end up having delta Ng. What is delta Ng? Delta Ng in this particular case over here is basically nothing but number of moles of gaseous products minus number of moles of gaseous reactants. So we'll have it as number of moles of gaseous products minus number of moles of gaseous reactants, which of course works out as 1 in this particular case. As you can see, there's 1 mole of product and 1 mole of 0 moles of reactant. So we end up having 1 mole of product alone to be taken into account. So we have delta Ng value as 1 in this case. So let's supply the values over here. Let's apply the numbers. So delta H works out as 40.66 into 5, and delta U is what is asked to be calculated. Plus, we are going to be having delta Ng into RT in this particular case, which is going to be 1 into 8.314 divided by 1000. Why am I dividing it by 1000? Because this unit over here is in kilojoules. And R value 8.314 is going to be in joules over there. So, I am dividing it by 1000 over here mainly because I want to effectively convert it into kilojoule units in this particular case. So here R value is going to be joules per Kelvin per mole. Now I am converting into kilojoules per Kelvin per mole. Next we are going to be having R into temperature. Temperature is going to be given as 373. Okay, so in this particular case here, this is actually going to be 1 for every 1 mole of liquid water here. So delta Ng is 1 for 1 mole of water. In this case, we have 5 moles of water liquid applicable. That means in this case, I should not be putting it as 1, I should be putting it as 5 in this scenario. So it actually works out as delta U plus 5 into 8.314 divided by 1000 into 373. This particular data of 90 grams has to be definitely included here, and it has to be included here also. This is a common error which students will make. Please watch for this. So how do we calculate for the delta U here? Delta U can be calculated as 40.66 into 5 minus 5 into 8.314 divided by 1000 multiplied by 373. This value, I actually calculated this just a while back and I have the exact value directly available. It works out as 15.5 in this particular case. So you can effectively write as 40.66 into 5 minus 15.5, and 40.66 into 5 works out as 200 and 203-ish. So it works out as somewhere around 203 over here. So 40.66 into 5 works out as 203.3. Alright, so 203.3 minus 15.5, this is going to be the answer in this particular question over here. So it works out basically as somewhere around 188 ke aaspaas. So 187.8. Let me check up once. So it works out as 187.8 plus 0.5 now, 188.3. 188.3, yep, 187.8. So it works out as 187.8 kilojoules in this particular case. It is not going to be per mole or anything. It is simply going to be 187.8 in this particular case. This is a numerical question in this particular paper. So the answer works out as 187.8 in this particular case over here. This is how you proceed. The points to pay attention to here are multiplying by 5 here and changing it to 5 here. Delta Mg is 1, but that is for 1 mole of water liquid. I have 5 moles of water liquid here, so I need to multiply it by 5 in this case. So please pay attention to these kind of crux points over here, because they will definitely come back and bite you later if you don't watch out for these. Let's get to the next one. What is the product of reaction of ammonia with bleaching powder? Now when we talk about ammonia with bleaching powder, ammonia has nitrogen in -3 oxidation state. Bleaching powder is basically going to be CaOCl2. In this here, what is my active ingredient? It is actually calcium 2 plus, Cl minus and OCl minus. These two are not going to be taking part in any reaction. These two are spectator ions. They do not take part over here. Alright. Whereas the OCl minus is a powerful oxidizing agent. Alright, this OCl minus works as a powerful oxidizing agent here. Why? Because in the OCl minus 1, chlorine is actually present in +1 and the oxygen is in -2 oxidation state. Chlorine +1 is going to be a powerful oxidizing agent which performs the oxidation of ammonia in this case. This will effectively result in the product as nitrogen gas plus we will be getting calcium chloride plus we will be getting water. So in this case here, ammonia will end up getting oxidized to nitrogen gas over here. It will change from -3 to oxidation state 0 here. And the chlorine +1 here will end up becoming chlorine -1. This is going to be the reaction here. Answer for this question is going to be nitrogen gas in this particular case over here. Let's move to the next question. Froth flotation is used for concentration of. Now when we talk about froth flotation here, this is a process which is exclusively used for sulfide ores in this particular case over here. Now why is it used for sulfide ores? The main reason is because froth flotation is based on the tendency of a substance to undergo selective adsorption. Alright, now when we talk about that, that is going to be something which is mainly possible for sulfide because it has got higher covalent character. Alright, when you talk about sulfide ores, usually the sulfide ores will generally end up having higher covalent character. Why do they have higher covalent character? Because sulfide anion is larger in size. And Fajan's rules tells us it is going to be basically having higher covalent character. Based on that, you will end up using froth flotation as a technique for concentration of sulfide ores. So answer in this case is straight away sulfide ores. So it's a very straightforward fact-based question which all of you who have just gone through metallurgy even to a small extent should be able to answer. Let's get to the next one. Which method is used for the preparation of colloidal salt? Now this is going to be something again from surface chemistry. So in this paper, we have seen 3 questions from surface chemistry, which is a huge number from this particular chapter over here. It's a very major shift in the focus over here. So far, if I have a look at the JEE mains papers, I would put it this way. The January last year paper, that is January 2019 paper, there was a focus on environmental chemistry and biomolecules. In the April 2019 paper, there was a focus on biomolecules and chemistry in everyday life. And in the January paper which happened in 2020, we had a focus mainly on biomolecules again in terms of the amino acid structures and chemistry in everyday life yet again. This time they are showing that they are shifting towards surface chemistry. So please make sure you're paying attention to surface chemistry questions seriously. All the individual theory parts in surface chemistry, pay attention to it for this particular round of examinations. Let's get to it. It's used for preparation of colloidal salt. Mond's process is going to be refining. Van Arkel method is also going to be refining. Briggs arc method is for colloidal salt preparation. Hoop's process is going to be again aluminum extraction and refining. Alright, so in this case colloidal salt over here, Briggs arc method is going to be the best one. Briggs arc is mainly used for the preparation of metal salts. Alright, we generally end up using Briggs arc method for the preparation of metal salts or colloids like gold salt. An example which is prepared by this is basically going to be gold salt. Okay, let's get to the next one. A compound A on heating gives gas B, which is the major constituent of air. Major constituent of air, this has to be nitrogen gas. Okay, B on reaction with hydrogen gas gives basic nature compound. Then compound A cannot be. So B on reaction with hydrogen gas gives basic nature compound. Why are they specifically mentioning this? Because technically if you look at it as major constituent of air, you can consider it as either nitrogen or oxygen gas. If you take it as oxygen gas, what does oxygen gas give with hydrogen? It will give you water. Water is not basic. Whereas nitrogen with hydrogen gas will end up giving you ammonia, which is a base. So the reason why they are mentioning this second statement here, this second statement which is given here is basically given to make sure the student understands that they are talking about nitrogen gas in this particular case here. Okay, so they are asking us which among the compounds on heating do not give nitrogen gas, because they are asking compound A cannot be in this case. Ammonium dichromate on heating will give N2 plus Cr2O3 plus H2O. NaN3 will give me sodium and will end up forming nitrogen gas. NH4NO2 will give me N2 plus H2O. PbNO3 twice on the other hand will give me PbO plus NO2 plus O2. So in this case we get nitrogen dioxide gas and we get oxygen gas in this particular case. So we are not interested in oxygen gas here, we are interested in getting nitrogen gas in this particular case. So the answer here is going to be option number 1. Let's get to the next one. Uncertainty in position of a 0.25 gram particle is 10 power minus 5 meters. Then the uncertainty in its velocity is going to be. When you see a question like this, if this question shows up as a numerical question, you have no other option but to solve properly. In this case, have a look here. The powers are very different. So when you are given this as a multiple option question, do not waste your time solving needlessly. It is a complete waste of time. Understand what they are asking. See if the options are going to be within a particular range. If they are going to be very much spread apart, only solve for the 10 power part over there. If you solve for the 10 power part correctly, automatically your answer will become correct over here. So do not waste your time calculating whether it is 1.2, 2.1, 1.6, 1.7. That is not what they are testing over here. They are testing whether you have the common sense to go and proceed and solve the question as quickly as possible. That is what is being tested in this case. It's a very straightforward direct formula application which is going to be using Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So what is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? Delta x into delta p is always greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. Now when we are calculating error, we will generally use the formula over here as delta x into delta p is equal to h by 4 pi. So this is basically the way in which we apply over here. Delta p na, it is going to be change in momentum in this particular case. So if it's change in momentum, we can put it as delta x into m into delta v is equal to h by 4 pi. Meaning they are asking us to calculate the uncertainty in its velocity. That means they are asking us to calculate delta v here. So delta v can be written as h, which is 6.626 into 10 power minus 34 divided by 4 into 3.14. And we are going to be having mass over here has been given as 0.25 grams. Grams is not an SI unit, we need to convert it to kilograms. So it works out as 0.25 into 10 power minus 3. Okay, and we are going to be having delta x has been given to us as 10 power minus 5. SI units is given over here as meters itself, so we don't need to worry, it is already in the SI units. The 10 power minus 5, 10 power minus 34, it works out as 10 power minus 29. 10 power minus 29 and this 10 power minus 26. As you can see here, you're going to be having this 0.25. If I take it up, it will work out as 6.626 divided by 4 into 3.14 into 2.5, but I'll have one more 10 multiplied upstairs here. So we'll have it as multiplied by 10 into some 10 power minus 26. This is going to be something around the value of 60. 4 into 2.5 is going to be approximately 10 obviously. It's going to be 10. 10 into 3.14, it's going to be 31.4. So it's going to be something like 2 into 10 power minus 26, which perfectly matches up with our answer option, Bombay in this case. So answer option 2 or Bombay is going to be the correct answer for this question. Let's get to the next one. Okay. When 1 mole of CrCl3.6H2O solution is treated with an excess of AgNO3. So we are taking 1 mole of this guy. Okay, all right. Then 3 moles of AgCl is obtained in this particular case. So they're telling us 1 mole of this compound with silver nitrate, yes, silver nitrate is giving us 3 moles of AgCl. Now, what is going to be happening in this particular case is this. You're going to be having this complex over here has many different structures possible, which are obviously given to you in your options in this particular case here. So let's take a look at each of these cases here. Let's take option 1 and examine how it works. So we have it as CrH2O 5 times, Cl and Cl2 dot H2O. When this guy reacts with AgNO3, pay attention here, only the ionization sphere chlorines, that is only the Cl minus ions present in the ionization sphere of the compound will get precipitated as AgCl. Alright, so only the chlorines which are present in the ionization sphere will get precipitated as AgCl in this particular case. That means in this case, 1 mole will give me 2 moles. That is the policy here. So let us use this principle for each of those cases here. So this guy will give me 2 moles. This guy will give me 3 moles, this fellow will give me 0 moles, and this will give me 1 mole. They are telling us 1 mole is giving 3 moles, which matches up with second option over here, which is going to be the correct answer in this particular question here. So I think this should probably be the last question of our discussion over here. Let me just confirm that. Yes, it indeed is the last question of our discussion for this particular question paper here. So this concludes our discussion for the September 2nd first session question paper. I might end up seeing you guys for another discussion. Take care till then and stay safe. Bye-bye.